everybody. Happy midsummer. Yes, it is the longest day of the year, and we are ready for it. Welcome to the Witches Movie Coven. Witches talking about witches in movies. My name is Patti Negri, and I'm one of your hosts. I am here with Jason Mankey, Richard-Lael Lillard, Courtney Buckley, and the beautiful Heather Greene. And 'tis the season. So this week we are doing the movie Midsommar. I had no idea what to expect. Ha ha! I had no idea what to expect. But we are Midsommar, so I don't know where we want to go first. I know we all have different things to talk about. I just walked in the door. Jason, do you want to talk about whatever you wanted to talk about first? Because your hand is up.
Well, that was an accident, but however, our producers suggested we talk a little bit about the summer solstice before we start, and today is the summer solstice, the longest day, the shortest night. It has been a holiday celebrated by humanity for thousands of years, and in Europe especially, still today, it is one of the biggest holiday seasons of the year. They kind of moved it a few days to the anniversary of St. John's birth because, Christianity and stuff. But a lot of those traditions are all from summer solstice celebrations. Some people call this time of year Litha, which comes from the Anglo-Saxon calendar. Litha was originally a double month, and it meant navigable seas. And in the mid-1970s, somebody decided that 2-month period would be a great name for the summer solstice. And a lot of us also call it, of course, midsummer, because if Beltane is the start of summer, then the summer solstice is right in the middle. Traditionally a fire festival, we do lots of different things as witches and pagans today to celebrate the solstice. There's no right or wrong way to celebrate, just the way that resonates best with you. Happy solstice and blessed midsummer.
Blessed midsummer.
Happy solstice, Jason.
Yeah.
Happy solstice.
Now I need a breath after that.
That was good. Celebrating the season. And Richard-Lael, you had something you wanted to put into this?
Well, yes, I'll give a little bit about the film. But before I do, I want to talk a little bit about Midsommar myself, because I played many years ago in the ballet. I played King Oberon, King of the Fairies, in Midsummer Night's Dream. And of course, to be true to character, I am indeed the King of the Fairies, just so you may or may not know the truth. But so we're going to be talking about specifically Midsommar, which is a horror film 2019 from the same director of now I'm drawing a blank. Hereditary, about King Paimon. But Midsommar is about this couple who are in a toxic, a horrible relationship. They end up by taking a trip to Sweden. One is to study the culture and the festival around Midsummer. They get all the way out in the middle of nowhere, and of course they are offered this sort of hallucinogen drug, and then things sort of end up by spiraling from there. Then, of course, the cult. Everyone is dressed in white. They welcome these groups of tourists. Also, they meet up with a British couple who disappear, but they welcome this group into their company. And then, of course, unbeknownst to them, the cult, they kill themselves at the age of 75 because they don't want to be too old. So they witness someone leaping off a cliff, and of course the girl is terrified and shocked at this, and the American tourists are really upset, but all of these Swedes are very stoic. And then another person leaps to his death, and he does not die and gets his face destroyed by a giant hammer. But while he has broken his legs and he's lying there moaning, the entire cult begins to feel his pain, and they moan with him until, of course, he gets his face pulverized. From there, we've got some other deaths that end up by, this one gets mysteriously lost, and this one, it doesn't show up. And then, of course, someone urinates on an ancestral tree, and of course, he gets his lungs ripped out of his back. And then from there on, there's a bear that ends up by being burnt, and she gets crowned the May Queen, and she turns on her boyfriend, and she has joined the cult, and she's happy ever after living in this cult of Swedish IKEA things.
Before one can be the May Queen, they must assemble a bookshelf.
Right.
Exactly. Well, thank you. You just gave us the whole movie. You just gave the entire movie. So let's go back to the backbone of things, Heather. Since you wrote the book on witches in movies, so tell us a little bit about this. I was I can't get over how surprised I was by this film.
Well, I'm going to give you a little bit. First of all, I don't consider this a movie the same way Wicker Man is not really a witchcraft movie. It's really, they're pagan, yes. Witchcraft, not. So this movie was actually, and there goes my earbud. This movie is a joint Swedish-British film, so is not in my book. And also, I think my book I'm totally losing my earbuds. I have the smallest ears, man. I can't get earbuds that fit, guys. And so send recommendations, please, for child. I need child-sized things. So anyway, so I want to talk about with this movie is comparing it to Wicker Man. And I incidentally, Wicker Man was released full for across the UK today for a special screening for summer solstice in a director's cut form in 4K. So a lot of people today were for celebrating summer solstice in the UK by watching Wicker Man. And I'm comparing the two because both of them are considered folk horror, which is a unique brand of horror where landscapes are featured, beautiful landscapes, as well as folk magic, ritual, mythology, and isolated communities. And usually you're taking somebody from outside that community and putting them into this isolated community that has links to this folk heritage. Okay, that's a folk horror film. And so Wicker Man does that. If you recall, we've talked about that already with the policeman, and then the tension between the culture of the person that's coming out from outside into the inside. So we see that here beautifully done in a very different type of way than the Wicker Man. And so what's interesting to me is that this movie came out at this period of time when folk magic and folk traditions were once again of interest. So you have that in the 70s when folk horror was popular in the 70s as well. You have it again now. And now folk magic and folk traditions in film for the last 10 years or so are being treated more respectfully. So that's one of the differences that you find in this film versus the Wicker Man and older films. Folk magic in older Hollywood films usually was relegated to horrific depictions of people from the South Seas. That was one of Hollywood loved the South, the natives from the South Seas or from Africa or from Haiti. So a lot of negative depictions of folk oriented magic from cultures that were not European or American. So that's what most of that happened originally. Things have changed in the last 20 years, and you're starting to get positive depictions of folk magic and folk traditions in the US, and also showing negative depictions of folk magic and folk traditions that come from Europe, not only from non-European, non-American places. So I think this has a very interesting place in our traditions, and it also is another way that another depiction of particularly Nordic folk traditions, which are not usually shown in witchcraft pagan films. Usually most of them are more British oriented. This one has the Nordic, the Futhark, etc. So I think there's some interesting things to talk about. I'll get into the allegories and the symbolism and the white supremacy at a later time in the broadcast. But overall, I think this is a very interesting depiction, again, of folk magic and folk traditions in a way that Hollywood hadn't done in the past and was now starting to explore over the last 10 years.
Thank you. I guess I will go next just because I had no idea. I'm actually not the movie person that everybody is. I'm busy. So I'm like, oh, we're going to watch a movie called Midsommar. I didn't even put together that it was a horror film. I was waiting for some romp through the bushes. And I kind of like when I go on ghost hunts, I don't want to know where I'm going. So it's just what it was. And all of a sudden, oh, the pretty white people, not white people. Yeah, but pretty white people. But I mean, the dressed in white and all this. And oh my God, the psychology of it. the mental health of it, the relationships of it was just, I think my jaw was dropped the whole time in this pretty setting, like you're saying, with these pretty outfits and these people, and some of the little things they did, like when they breathe together, I love that. Even when they moan together, I like that. And when they cry together, I'm like, oh, what a beautiful group thing. And then until they start slaughtering everyone, I just sat there really the whole time going, I loved it, but I just so left field of what I was expecting. Wild.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. It's just just like the Wicker Man, although even more so. It's like, yeah, no, oh yeah, no, whoa, yeah, no.
Yeah, like, yeah, I like that. Let's moan together, not just the sex moaning, but the wailing. Oh yeah, look at that energetic connection. No,
the level of
I liked the sex moaning.
I like the sex moaning. I did too.
Okay, sorry, Jason.
The level of violence though is so much greater in this movie than the Wicker Man. And one of the things about the Wicker Man, as you know, a pagan person, you can go, well, they gave Howie all these outs, right? You had all these opportunities. All you had to do was sleep with Brett Eklund. And there are no outs in Midsommar. When you're gonna die, you're gonna die. And so it's very different in that sense. It's just there's a lot more fatality.
I actually there's a way I know how you can survive Midsommar, and I'm going to demonstrate that right now.
Uh-oh.
My first thought was just staying home.
He just leave.
You come into this group and they say, "Here, drink this. It'll open you up and lower your defenses. You leave."
I think that's what the one couple tried to do, and it didn't work out there, Richard-Lael.
Yeah, the Brits tried to leave, and they were not quite allowed to leave.
That is true, but they waited. They stayed too long.
Yeah.
See, from the very first moment, I would have been like, and I lived in Sweden, so I love the Swedes. But if I would have come into the middle of nowhere and they would have said that, I would have said, you know what, that's fine. That's fine. I think actually, I'll tell you a funny story about exiting. I was actually across the border in Denmark, and I went to this club called the Wonk. I can still, all of these years later, remember the address. It was at Adelgaten 2. And I had gone over, it was Halloween night. So it was not Midsommar, but it was Halloween. And I dug in my suitcase and put together some sort of costume. And I went to this club and I met this really attractive guy. And he wanted me to go back with him. And we get to his apartment and the phone starts ringing. And it's midnight. The phone starts ringing. And it rings all night long. Then the doorbell starts ringing and it rings all night long. And then there's someone screaming in the street and it happens all night long until about 6 o'clock in the morning. And he says, "Oh, it's just my ex-boyfriend. Don't worry. He's harmless." And I'm wearing heels. Like, yes, I had that in my suitcase, but I'm wearing heels. And I'm going, I have to call a taxi and I don't know how I'm going to get out of here. So the way that you escape Midsommar is that you wait until they stop offering, they stop ringing the doorbells, they stop offering you weird drinks, and then you sneak out the back door. That's how you do it.
So did you guys just point out one thing with your theory here? That would be possible because you're a white man, but the reality is in this movie, those people who didn't escape were not only people of color. Number one, they were also brought there as sacrifices to begin with. There is no way anyone was going to allow them to leave, no matter what they were doing, no matter how high their heels, no matter how many cabs they called. It was not happening because in this case, they were brought there they needed 9 new blood and old blood.
I also
Go ahead,
think that it was like, it's like being in an abusive relationship, like no joke, because by the time you got to that point, you were so messed up in your mind. And I could see it happening to me. It was like when he said, when he was trying to explain like them jumping off the cliff, like the lady runs over and is like, no, it's not a bad thing. Like, let me explain. and they explain their whole tradition or whatever. And then the boyfriend is like gaslighting her, and he's like, no, it's fine because, you know, in our, where we live, you know, we stick them in a nursing home and they probably think that's barbaric. So like here where they are, like this is, and it's like, in watching the movie, it's like, okay, yeah, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, oh, okay, yeah, that's an explanation. I can be on board with that. And I feel like it happens to you, the viewer, too. Like you get gaslit into believing you're like safe and everything is going to turn out okay, especially if you go into it not knowing it's a horror movie and then just get absolutely railed. Like it was so mind-blowing that like it did all of these things. This movie did all of these things.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like one of the reasons this is one of my favorite movies, and I think it's one of the most creative horror movies that I've ever seen, because when you watch traditional horror, and it's nighttime, you're not safe. But when it's daytime, as a viewer, as the characters, usually you're safe. And the majority of this movie was in the daytime, and you were never safe. And it's things like how they trick you with the visuals and everything so beautiful, and the sounds that they play, and all the things. And one of my favorite things that A24 does in their movies is, even though the gore is so violent and so horrific to look at, it's not like gratuitous, like flash it in your face just to make you jump. They put it on the screen and they make you stare at it, and you have to like look it in its eye and like absorb it for everything that it is, and get really, really, really uncomfortable with it, and then wait 5 more minutes, and then they take it off the screen. And I just think that there's something like so powerful to that. So as a fan of horror movies, or I mean, some horror movies, I guess I'm learning that about myself as I'm watching these movies with you guys. But as a fan of horror movies, this to me was like so well done because of all those things.
There were times I just
absolutely
wanted to get to like nighttime. Like it just
Right.
felt safer all of a sudden. Like there's too much sun. The sky is too blue. This is terrifying. I need some darkness. Where is the damn moon?
and that's part of the horror, isn't it?
Yeah. Because it subverts expectations in that sense, right? Because we are so used to, oh, it's dark. Now I'm in trouble. And now it's like, oh no, the sun is out. I'm in big trouble.
And Mark says that right at the beginning when he says, why is the sun out? Why is the sun out? I don't like this. This is wrong.
Yeah.
So, it's alluded to.
Because it's supposed to be the highest altitude. And so it's what is it, the midnight sun, I think they call it on Midsummer. So it's the sun. The sun does not set for the traditional times. And it especially if you're not mentally all there, whether it be chemically, or it can be really trippy for you.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would give it all a pass. I'd give that all a pass, even though that's not really something that Northern Sweden would do. But what I can't give a pass is that I hated every single actor. I hated every single relationship in this film. I wanted them all to be dead. All of them. I wanted them to be dead.
Wow.
Even May Queen herself, Florence Pugh?
Yes.
Richard-Lael,
Because
we're on a timeout. No, we're on a timeout. Don't look at me in my eyes.
They had a toxic relationship from the very beginning.
Yes.
And she was not good for him. And she invites herself on this holiday trip with his buddies. That's so toxic. And then he wants to break up with her, but he can't. And then he's just a plain horrible jerk the entire time. There's no redeeming, and he's not even that hot. He's like a dollar store Chris Pratt.
See, we're supposed to feel all that stuff. We were supposed to feel all that.
It's a trap. They're in a trap, as well as once they get to the thing, it's a series of traps in this film, isn't it?
All of the friends are just jerks. They don't care culturally. The one just cares about banging Swedish chicks. That's a direct quote. They are, I just couldn't stand any of them. I couldn't stand them. And I thought 3 hours, I could be building an IKEA bookshelf with this time.
No.
Danny's not even a Disney princess and you hate her. I mean, that's surprising.
You know what I do love? I will tell you, I will give this credit. Danny, the woman who played Danny, is a British woman, and her American accent was good.
Florence Pugh, she's great in everything
Okay.
she does.
I have to hop in. I have to hop in before my skin explodes off of me and my lungs come out and breathe on their own out here. Listen, to me, it's like this is a girl who has lived with this bipolar sister who is clearly in need of help because of how far she goes for however long. So she's living with trauma after trauma after trauma, and she's looking for family. And someone commented this. Let me scroll through and see if I can find it. It was way back in the beginning. I got real excited about
family.
it.
As horrible as the film is, she gets the family that she deserves.
Wanted, yeah.
As always, yeah. Yes, it was beautiful. Yeah, thank you, the Australian Morlock. I appreciate that. But she's like searching for now the sister takes out the mother and the father, and she's alone in the world, and she's looking for something. And so she latches on to her boyfriend, however unhealthy this relationship is, which obviously it is. And yes, he's a huge tool, but she's not healthy. She can't get healthy. She has no room in her life to be healthy. Like, nobody's focuses on her. And then she goes off to this, she doesn't want to be left alone. She goes off on this thing. Not a smart choice. Sure, I'll give you that. But then this absolute queen at the end of the movie, I will never forget the first time I watched this movie. I was sitting at my computer and I stood up out of my chair and I was like watching the end of the movie when she just sacrifices him, and then turns around and the smile on her face. My whole heart, I was like, yes, get it. Like, I am behind this character 100%. I talk about this all the time on here, that I love that coming into your power moment. And yeah, sure, it's because she was captured and brainwashed by a cult, but you know what? I love it for her. It suits her well. I just love it for her.
See, I don't think she had any control over the situation to start with. Pelly, right, the guy from Sweden who brings them all there, he's manipulating the situation from the very start.
Yeah.
He knows that she's broken. He knows that there are things wrong with their relationship, and he's setting this all up. Right. I'm sorry. I just can't get on board with murder. Right. There's a thing where I just can't go that far.
I can.
I can't get on board with murder.
I can.
Christian, the boyfriend's terrible. And I'm watching the movie and I don't necessarily mind that he dies because he's terrible. But I don't know. It's like there's a step too far with like being excited for murder. There are other ways to find families and be healthy other than murdering someone in a bear suit.
Put him in that bear suit, light it on fire. I was on board. I loved it.
I was more sad about the death of the bear. It made me sob in my Volvo.
So I think
when I saw the bear in the cage, I'm like, oh God.
But it was predicted, though. If you noticed when she's on the call and she's sobbing, she's actually not SAAB, but she's sobbing, SOBBING. She's sobbing because she's lost her family, and above her bed is a princess and a bear, which is an old Swedish tradition. It's an old folk story. So the clues were there all along. And then when they get there and the entire plot is painted out on the walls, and then when Dollar Store Chris Pratt goes in to talk to the woman about banging this probably underage girl, because that's the tradition of, anyway, he sat on that stool, and in front of him is a picture of a bear on fire. So if you get the clues, you get the clues.
Speaking of that scene, one of my
the director did. I'm going to jump in. A brilliant job at in this movie, and I think this is a brilliant film. I mean, I'll just say, and so that'll give you a cue to what my wand rating is going to be, and it's more, the story is good, and all the things we've been discussing is good, but as a filmmaker, as a film, just looking at it as a film student perspective, this film is tight. The pieces are wrapped up. He gives those cues. He knows those cues, and he put them in purposefully. And if you watch closely, everything is tight. And that's one of the most brilliant. That's one of the brilliant pieces. The other brilliant piece I loved about this film is the actual use of the film medium itself. So if you look, one of the things I love is the minute when they're moving from the space of the beginning of the film, when they're in America, and then when they first get to Sweden, everything, all the shots have are very boxy. They're darker, they're boxy. You see a lot of squares and rectangles just in the forms and what you see in the window shapes and what you see books, for example, creating these boxes. And then when you get out finally into that, you make the transition, they land, and you're starting to see the change. But in order to change over from the normal everyday space that we would know, and you move into the space of this cult, into this, what happens is they're driving, and then all of a sudden the camera flips, and now you're watching the camera upside down, and then it spins again around like this. And so by the time you land yourself in that space of the landscape of the cult, you've gone on this trippy experience yourself as the viewer. That's brilliant filmmaking. That's using the camera and the medium to create the feeling that the actors are feeling. And it's done without being invasive and forcing it upon you. It's subtle. You almost don't notice it. And there's other places you see it where when they start to take the drink, the special, what did we say it is? Spring water with a little bit of flavor. What was that? Isn't that what it was? It was spring water with a little
special,
with a little flavor or something like that. Anyway, when they start to take that throughout the film, you'll see things sort of doing this even when they're not talking about it. Like when they're sitting at the table, like they're just talking and things are going on, and just if you look to the side, something is pulsating. Special properties. It's spring water with special properties. That's right. So you'll see what you'll notice is in the background, subtle things like that the director is using to create this ambiance, or a faded in the background when she's shocked when they jump. All of a sudden, everything just blurs in the background and you're focused on her. This director knows how to use the film medium to make the film that much more effective, to make it tight and to make it powerful for the viewer, so they're along for the ride as well. So
did you watch the extended cut or the original theatrical version?
I don't know. I've seen it twice now, so I don't know which one I've watched.
I watched the one on Showtime, probably regular.
Yeah. There's like an extra cut with another 20 or 30 minutes in it. And when my wife saw it, she's like, we must watch that. And there's a little more texture, there's a little more depth, and you see a little bit more of some of the supporting characters. But even without the director's cut, I'm with Heather that I think this is a really well put together film. And one of the things I love about it is there are not a whole lot of movies that you're watching it and you just go, whoa, right? Because you're just so blown away by what's happening. You're not expecting any of the things that are going to happen. By about the midway point, you kind of get that, yes, there are things that are being hinted at, but the original scene where the people are throwing themselves off the cliff and things, I mean, it's just unprecedented in film to be that surprised, I think, while watching something.
Yeah.
And the gore.
Courtney started to say something about the bear scene, though.
Oh no, it was the scene where he was sitting there talking about where he was allowed to mate with the girl. And one of my quotes, I have two quotes tonight that I feel like one is funny and one is very powerful, and either one I wouldn't mind ordering on a t-shirt. But she tells him this, she sits him down. It's like such a cool scene, I think, because it's funny in the middle of all this, but like also like what else are you gonna do? He's sitting there and she's asking him how he feels about this girl because he's been approved to mate with her. And he just like pauses and like looks at her, and then he says, I think I ate one of her pubic hairs. And this woman like doesn't bat an eye, and she just goes, sounds probably right. Sounds probably right. Like that's,
I mean, it is folk music.
Yeah. Right.
It is.
Like, and the instructions on how to do that obviously were on the wall earlier, and we all saw that. But it was just like she just was like, yeah, sounds probably right. And I was like, yep, that's what we do here. Sure. And I love it. I'm here for it.
What's your other
So-
quote?
Okay, well, Richard-Lael needs to be banned from buying this T-shirt, and I will, because it's not for you. This is
I don't
not
wear
for you.
T-shirts, dearie.
Okay,
Only at
you're
the
not
gym.
allowed to. This is not a quote for you. Turn your camera off. Don't look at me in my eyes. Because I think, look at that May Queen go, right? I love her, Queen Slay, get it, right? But it's when after she eats the fish, and they're telling her she has to bless the crop, and she says, "Can Christian is that his name?
Mhm.
Can Dollar Store Chris Pratt come with me?" And the lady goes, "No, the queen must ride alone." And that to me was like, yes, she is in this alone, but like that's such a powerful statement. And that to me was like the turning point for when she was just like, you know what, I got this, and I'm gonna go do the thing. And then I'm gonna sacrifice my boyfriend because he's from the dollar store. And I thought that was the queen must ride alone. I would like to get that tattooed across my forehead forever. And I loved it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. I do like way back when somebody's quote that it would probably be a whole different and maybe even better experience, like on mushrooms.
But I feel like
you don't see that represented really well. And they represented it really well in my experience of on hallucinogenic, on mushrooms. It's like, yeah.
I was reading about that today, and they shot that scene a bunch of different times, and they really weren't sure how to do it, and that sometimes it was too over the top, and then sometimes you couldn't tell what was going on, and they decided on that usage of sort of the trippy imagery 2 weeks before they released the film for its first showing.
Did you happen to notice, speaking of hallucinating, so they meet these Swedes, and they're offered this sort of hallucinogen, and they all take them, and they're all sitting there, and then they're freaking out about the sun being up at 9 o'clock at night, specifically 9. Everything is in nines. Everything is 9 years, even though Midsummer is really 6 days, but this one it's 9 days. Anyway, so one of the jerky friends says, "You're my real family," and this really freaks out what's her name, and she goes off to try to find a way away from them, and she ends up in a shed. And did you notice that her dead sister was in the mirror behind her? Did you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And her mom was at the when she was in the maid dress.
Yes,
her mom was there too.
Not happy. Her mom was not happy.
No, but I think, like, I have not ever participated in taking hallucinogenics, so I don't know what it's really like. But I find that when a movie does that, it always bothers me because I don't feel like it's done for effect, and it doesn't come across like for someone who has done it before and thinks it's funny and whatever, and then it's a connection. But for someone who never has, it seems like ridiculous. But in this one, it doesn't. It almost seems like it's subtle enough. It's not too subtle that you don't notice it, but it's subtle enough that it's not overpowering. It's not like this is what the scene is. Woo! Like it's not like it's just like the flower is talking a little bit, or like something is moving around, or like whatever. But they do it in the same way like Heather was talking about earlier, when like the scene where they were jumping off the cliff. They hit the ground, and all of a sudden, like, all the sound goes out because they're so in shock, and everything's blurry around them, including the noise. And like that's how you feel when you're in that much shock. But like it's in that same vein, so I feel like it wasn't overdone. It was done so tastefully that it almost felt like you as the viewer were also being like poisoned with this while you were watching this happen. It just is so immersive to me, I think, and that's why I love it so much.
It's a very sophisticated way of using the film, and I think the light is the same type of sophistication. You don't really notice that it never gets dark, except for I think it's the one scene is at night when he sneaks out.
Right.
Which is apropos, which is very interesting that it's that scene. But I think you don't notice that, and and the light forces you to see things, and it's similar to when a camera doesn't give you a break doesn't give the viewer a break, and forces you to see everything, you get uncomfortable. People get uncomfortable when they're forced to see stuff continually, and I think The Light does that. And it's a very sophisticated form of filmmaking we find here in this film, and it's really a remarkable feat. But one thing, getting back to the ending and getting to the horror of it, I found after a while, I'm like, okay, where does this really sit in a lot of the horror movies we're watching as far as witchcraft, women's empowerment, all the things we often talk about? And I think that if Rosemary's Baby and The Wicker Man and Hungry Wives had a love child in modern day, that's what we're looking at here. I thought at first it's Rosemary's Baby and The Wicker Man for the folk magic and the fire at the end and all of that stuff. Rosemary's Baby for sort of the ending of going, okay, well, this happened to me. I've been forced into this situation. Now I'm going to look at the baby. That sort of sense of what's going on there. And then, but you have the empowerment part where with the smile at the end. And that is really that really pulls from the movie Hungry Wives, which we've also talked about, that empowerment of being free. So I think that's where it sits with me, is if those three movies got together and had a love child, we'd have, in modern ways, this would be Midsommar, a combination of those three films. And it's really a remarkable feat, as I said.
I don't know, the gaslighting in this reminds me of Rosemary's Baby too, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah, because as I said before, I don't think Dani's really controls her ending, right? They set her up for this. She had no choice. They pushed her there. They broke her mind, and her mind was already half broken after all the trauma that she went through. And they gave her that extra little push. You know, I don't think she comes. Yeah.
I didn't like her, but I felt for her.
Absolutely.
I from the beginning, because you saw how messed up she was, and she never, ever, ever, ever once smiled until the end. This poor girl, you just see the terror, the horror, the confusion, everything else that she went through in life. Yeah, didn't like her, but I felt for her.
I so expected though for her when she won the dance contest, which actually is a real thing.
She did smile there a little.
I thought, oh, she's signed her death warrant. She's going to die now. Bye-bye. But she didn't. But the dance is actually quite intriguing to me, because in the story and in folk magic and in this part of Sweden, there's a little bit of history about the maypole. These girls, they dance and dance and dance and dance until they drop dead. And the violinist is known as the Black One. It's not about his skin color. He also has a cloven foot, and he's the devil. He's basically the devil. They dance till you're dead.
You mentioned violin. You mentioned violin too. The music in this movie is terrific. It's kind of electronic, but then there's some violin fiddle in. And I was just listening to the soundtrack earlier today, and it terrified me in places. I mean, it's so well done, because like that village, the music is like nothing I'd ever heard before, right? It's just all so foreign and different. Ari Aster is a great director. Like, everything about this film is just like so on point and fits within that world.
Yeah, it's tight. It's very tight. I think I'm going to mention the elephant in the room now, since we haven't mentioned it, is the white supremacy. And so there's a lot of talk, if you read articles about this, is that it's hard to miss the fact that the 1, 2, 3 of the characters that are killed are people of color. The 2 men who are chosen as breeders are the white men. Of course, one has a faux pas and winds up ending his life because of his faux pas at the ancestral tree. And so it's not, and then of course the woman that's left is the blonde-haired white girl. So there is, and there's discussions about, Ari Aster does have connections to, does have Jewish heritage, apparently. I don't have a lot of research on Ari Aster, but there is a lot of talk about how this is an allegory for modern times, how this is a warning about how white supremacy can infiltrate and affect and coerce people. And so you see that as another layer of this film, because the people are brought in, and then she does get wrapped up into it. And of course, you see that everybody is mostly very light skinned and mostly blonde. Of course, there is a genetic thing. There's, it is Sweden, so you do expect that to some degree, but you also see that it especially wrapped up using the Futhark, which is connected to the Nordic traditions, which has, unfortunately, a links to white supremacy as well. Unfortunately, I'm going to add in to that. So there's a lot in modern times. So there is a connection here that Ari Aster is trying to make as a warning about white supremacy and the dangers of it as well. So you have that piece of this movie too, which is another brilliant element that's buried beneath a brilliant story.
Like, if you have a chance to like mate with dime store Chris Pratt or William Jackson Harper, who's Chidi from The Good Place, you choose Chidi from The Good Place.
Chidi, 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 Chidi. Every time.
It's a real connection being made here, and I think it's a good one, and I think you see it a little bit in The Wicker Man as well, in a different way, but this is more personal. Midsummer's story is more personal than The Wicker Man is, way more. You get into the characters on a very deep level, so I think you see it, and I think it's very apropos to our times. It would not have been made in 1970. This is a 2019 film, a 2020 film that speaks to what's going on in our world today, and I think he hits it on the nail on the head here.
He hits the old guy on the head.
Oh no! Oh,
The mallet hits the head.
I had a little issue with that because they say you die at, what was it, 72 or 75? I thought it was 72.
It's in nines, whatever that is.
It's the nines, but
7 plus 2 is 9.
It was 72. But I saw some of the people in the town looked older than 72, or they had lived, males, not females. But I go, if that guy's 72, he lived a really hard life, and he doesn't look like he lived really hard life.
It's all that sunlight. It's just too much sunlight.
Yeah, because
I mean that is true. When I lived in Sweden, the men especially look older. I don't know why.
Fair skin.
But when and of course maybe it's the Viking blood, because a lot of them are hairier, and maybe it is. Maybe it's the fair skin and the lack of moisturizer and sunscreen. I don't know.
And don't forget, everybody's wieners are out in Midsummer. Just everybody's.
I mean, I liked that.
Kit and caboodle are just out everywhere. I didn't mind it this time because it fit with the story.
Yeah.
right.
And because there was also wieners and boobs.
Another little story from this movie, though, like when it was getting rated to see if it would be an R rated or an NC-17, they didn't have a problem with the violence. It was the nudity, and they had to cut some of the nudity out. It's weird to me where our priorities lie. Yeah. Boobs and penises, the worst, but heads and mallets, have at it.
No,
you hit the nail on the head.
Yes.
And they're green.
From an interesting perspective, pagan perspective, the nature aspect of this, I was reading one thing about a theory that a lot of fans have about the deaths. Okay, this has a higher body count than The Wicker Man, which I keep comparing it to. And the deaths are linked to the elements, apparently, and the seasons, which they talk about. Everything's linked to the seasons, right? So there's this theory, and I didn't go back after I read the theory to go look at the film, but I'll just present it here because, hey, why not, right? We're just all pagans here. So there is a fire death, a water death, a earth death, and an air death. So the dude who gets, it's I think Josh, who they find the leg inside the dirt, right? He is the one who has to be grounded because he thought he was getting too holy, he was getting above himself, so he needed to be grounded, so his foot's in the ground. That's the earth death. Then you have the air death, the one who was trying to take flight. He was trying to run away, and so they tied him up and made wings out of his skin. That was Simon. That was Simon.
That was
What?
a Viking
No,
tradition.
his skin is opened up, and then you have the lungs sticking out. Make him, and he has his eyes are gone. He's all so, and he's hanging up. So that's the air death. Okay. So then when the girl is wheeled out in the wheelbarrow, she's covered in seaweeds and water. That's the water death. Presumably she was drowned. Okay, to wash her of her sins. I don't know. That's all theory because you never see her. And then the final death is the fire death, which is the man who or the Mark who went and peed on the ancestors and had the presumptuousness, the gall, let's say, to actually pee on that. So they saying that's the fire death. And so this is a theory about there's all three, and so they wind up inside the whatever, the yellow chapel, and the bear is the center of it all. The spirit is the bear, and then poof. So that's one of the theories that go around among the fandom about the different deaths.
That makes me want to watch it again. Just to get I'm sure I missed.
I always want to watch it again. I love this movie so much.
There's so many little pieces like that. I'm like, okay, I can see where they're going, definitely, because there's so many little tight pieces, and he does such a good job of it that, yeah, okay, I'll go with that.
Courtney loves this movie. I remember when I left, I saw this in the theater because I was really excited when I saw the original trailers and all that. And I left and I looked at my wife and I was like, why does Ari Aster hate pagans so very, very much in all of his films? Because he doesn't really portray us in the best light. However, after having said that, there are a lot of witches and pagans who love this film. And my friend Thorne Mooney is one of them. Thorne has written several books for Llewellyn. And in 2019, she dressed up as the May Queen on her way to work.
The Queen must ride
alone.
Thorne.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Thorne. She was very proud of these pictures, and
she was.
I thought they were great. Yeah, I like that she wore it to work. I mean, that to me was the best.
That's dedication.
Yeah.
That's a lot of flowers. Yes.
You know, I have a joke about that. It was not my joke, though. My mother's uncle. My mother wore flowers in her hair, like you, lovely lady. She wore flowers in her hair. And her uncle said to her, "You look like a flower child." And my mother said, "Oh, thank you." And he said, "Either that or a bloomin' idiot." But your friend did not look like a blooming idiot. She looked amazing. I love all the flowers.
She's a character.
Oh
yeah.
Yes.
I just got tired looking at that, like putting all of that together. Wow.
It's a lot.
That's dedication.
What
How do you
makes
go to
it
the
funny is
bathroom?
the Michaels bag still on the floor next to her. Like she was just like, "Quick, take the picture! I did it! I finished it!" I love it.
Oh yeah, there they are.
How did she get in the car to get to work?
And the face. Look at it. She's making the same face. I love it. Queen.
Yeah, she is making the same face. That's beautiful. Well, anyway, our guests are getting close to the end. Is there anything we haven't talked about that we were going to talk about before we vote or not? Scary fun.
I don't think so.
All right. Now, everybody we love all your comments. You guys have been commenting, whether we've said it or not. We are reading them and we are loving them. And thank you. So, Midsommar, wands up. Wands down.
My wand is missing.
You can just use a bone.
You could use your femur.
My femur is fems up.
Patti, I asked, did you watch this on your phone?
No, I just on Showtime. I got my real TV.
Okay.
That's good.
Oh.
It's another beautiful film that works really well the bigger the screen is,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, no, I absolutely loved it. Everything about it. I loved I loved hating people. I loved the good magic. I loved the bad magic. I loved it. So we got a up, and a neutral.
I'm putting enough things up to cancel out
Wait,
Richard-Lael's Meatloaf.
Felicity,
Only reason
Felicity has her hand up.
Felicity watched it. She loved it.
The only reason that I'm even neutral is because technically it was a great film. Technically, but everything else was.
Ugh.
Richard
Richard-Lael, you wound me.
Wanted my
Look,
money
we
back.
got
It was
two
only
thumbs up,
$3.
thumbs up, down. We've got one down, one
We got it
neutral,
down.
Oh,
one
no.
down.
This
We've
is-
got a couple downs,
This is
more
a
ups, and a
brilliant.
couple neutrals. On the
I'm going to say this is brilliant filmmaking. I mean, whether you like the story, whether it makes you, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. But from a film historian's perspective, and from studied a lot of film, this is what we'd call brilliant filmmaking.
Yeah.
In all ways. You don't like the story. You don't like the gratuitous. It's not gratuitous. You don't like the violence. You don't like the themes or horror. That's one thing. But if you just want to watch it for brilliant filmmaking, if you want to be a filmmaker, if you strive to be a filmmaker, watch this film because it's brilliant filmmaking.
This film is a lot like The Witch, though. Is a movie that some people really love and appreciate the artistry of. And then there are a lot of people who just don't get it. I mean, I always like to try to read some of the backstory to these films. And the audience reaction to this film was extremely mixed when it came out. Just because I think it's so unconventional and unsettling. But it's like people who watch movies for a living think it's great. And then the audience goes in and they just don't know what to think when they're done. And I think that was the same way with The Witch.
Well, I think for different reasons. I think this one is extremely unsettling, and it keeps in the way The Wicker Man is. It keeps you in that unsettled place. There's no jump scares, so people expect horror in a different type of horror, and it's just literally uncomfortable and forces you to see things that are uncomfortable and doesn't judge them, which is what we expect as American film goers. Whereas The Witch, people didn't like that because it wasn't a traditional horror film. It was just haunting.
Right.
And and so, yes, I completely agree with you, Jason. If film bureau goes in expecting a certain thing because the way it's marketed and gets something totally different, and they're like, whoa, or they're uncomfortable and they're like, I don't like this. But The Witch, again, is another brilliant film. It's, whether you like it or not, that's brilliant filmmaking. And if you want to make movies, you want to do two things. You want to watch the brilliant films, whether you like them or not, and you want to watch the really bad ones so you know what not to do. So this one is brilliant.
It's like rogue horror, right? Like not meeting expectations of the general audience and making something completely unique and different.
Absolutely, I agree.
All right. Well, I agree wholeheartedly. I absolutely loved it. One of my favorites of all the movies we've done, I must say. We do know what we're going to do next week, right?
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So everybody, we often don't have it beforehand to announce. So now, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Everybody, next Wednesday, same time, same place. And anybody have anything to check in with where we go? Let's start with Heather.
Well, I'm going to be I'm going to be up in Minneapolis for a week. I don't have any events to see anybody because I am going to be working and working on manuscripts, working with my great coworkers at Llewellyn. So I'm going to be pretty much buried in manuscripts and meetings for a week up in Minneapolis, but I'm looking forward to that time. We're only 3 weeks away from Mystic South, so please come to Atlanta and see us there. I will be there. I will be presenting as well as chatting and meeting people and socializing and all the good stuff you have at the 3-day Wiccan conference, and or not Wiccan, excuse me, Wiccan, pagan, mystic, all the things. So please come out to Atlanta for Mystic South and see us there. Other than that, I just had a wonderful article on the Wicker Man come out, which is why it's on my mind. So you can see that on Religion News Service that came out today for summer solstice, my summer solstice article. And other than that, I'll take a picture of my Narnia cabinet and have it for you guys next week to see if we can see if anything goes in or comes out of it. I do have an Narnia cabinet.
That's beautiful. Okay, Richard-Lael.
I'll be in Atlanta on the 2nd of September for the Debauchery Ball. And also I'm teaching at University Magicus, which is, we are there. It's an all tradition kind of magic from every spectrum. You can find it there. And I also want to take a moment to show the new pillow at Mystery Control, because those of you who want to cuddle with me, this is sort of the dollar store Chris Pratt. There's a pillow. I'm not the dollar store. I'm more like the I don't know, like the garage sale. I don't know. I wish I were a dollar
Garage
store.
sale Chris Evans.
Right. See, that's even better. But anyway, there's shirts and pillows there that you could find.
I want this pillow. I must have.
Mysterycontrol.com.
Mystery Control.
Okay, Courtney.
That's me. Today was my last day of school for the summer.
Woo!
I'm off for summer break. So I will be doing, hopefully I'm sick, so once I get better, I'll be streaming some horror games on Twitch. The Themes on Twitch. So you can find me there. You can watch me on old episodes of scaredalone.com. Other than that, I will be resting, relaxing, and catching up on my witch movies and witch series, and riding alone like the queen I am. So,
Jason?
We just had the Book of Kernonos released. It's all about everyone's favorite not Gaelic, it's not Gaelic, but French, Gallic, antler deity. And this was actually #1 on paganism on the Amazon charts, which I could not believe, because it's such a niche book in the history of paganism. So I'm very excited about that. I'll be at the Starwood Festival in a couple of weeks, sadly the same time as Mystic South. They're really not the same. One is camping and probably special spring water with with special properties, more so than the other one.
Hey, we're gonna have special properties at Mystic South too.
Yeah. And then of course you can buy your Browitch materials at Mystery Control, which I'm really excited about. I just got this Browitch whiskey glass and I just think it's the best. Oh my God, that pillow must be at my house.
Wow. That's one handsome devil if I've ever seen one.
I know.
Yes.
That is brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I'm not appearing anywhere public. I'm doing some filming in July, but nowhere else. I'm going to be home or traveling and writing and doing all sorts of fun things, and happy to be home. August, I'll be doing Hex Fest in New Orleans, and then I'll be at Michigan Paracon in Sault Ste. Marie, way upper Michigan. So it all picks up, and then September, October, November, it's off and running. So like us, follow us, go to Mystery Control where all our clothes. You can cuddle with Richard and with Heather and with Browitch and with Courtney and Quotes and me. Everything is 25% off if you do code Patti right now, remember, Patti's Power Panties. Superheroes have them. Mormons have them. You should have them. I promise. Change your underwear. Change your life. They work. Everybody's writing me back. They work. Like, I had an audition. I had this. Whatever they do in their life. Power in your pants. So that's it. Thank you we're still ahead of ourselves by 2 minutes. I was hurrying.
I know.
That's crazy. So we could talk about, so mysterycontrol.com. Find us on all the social medias. All of us do check out University Magicus. That is my school. We're Richard-Lael. It is an all paths, crazy, fabulous, wonderful school with wonderful teachers. Check out Paraflix if you like this horror kind of stuff. Probably some of the films we're even talking about. We're pulling more and more horror films, paraflix.com, all horror and paranormal streaming service. And I guess that's it. We're down to that last minute, and there's one more thing that witches do. What is that?
Cackle with Black Phillips.
1, 2, 3.
Whoa.
Oh,